Hi guys, my name is Peace Adibayo. So today we are going to be learning how to cut this underbust corset top with a draped cup, as you can see here. So this is what we're going to be learning today. So first, I'll just come up and draw a straight line. I'm going to draw a straight line up here, as you can see where my French curve is. I'm going to draw a straight line, which will serve as the shoulder line. So I've drafted it. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to start with my basic body measurements. I'm going to measure my bust point, which is 9. I'll measure my under bust, which is 12. I'll also go and measure my half length, which is 16. Then I'll add 3 inch to it, which is 19, which I'll just call my blouse length. So I'm just going to rule it. I'll draw a straight line there and indicate. I'll draw my straight line and indicate it. So I'm actually done with that. So I'm going to label it. That's my bust point. That's my under bust. This is my half length, and this is now my blouse length. I'll just call it my blouse length. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to come and measure my armhole line. My armhole line is 8. I'm going to measure 8 and also draft a straight line, just like I've been doing with the other lines. So I'm going to draft my armhole line, and that's it. And after I'm done with that, I'm going to label it. I'll just write AH, meaning armhole. After I'm done with that, I'm going to come up and measure my back, which is 7. I measure it, then I take my rule and draft a straight line down, which serves as the armhole. That's the armhole line, the depth of the armhole line. So having done with the depth of the armhole line, then the next thing is to get the curve. So on this armhole, this place I wrote armhole, I'm going to measure 2 inch there. That's what I normally do to get my curve most times. So on the depth of the armhole line, I'm going to measure half, which is 4. After I divide it by 2, which is 4, then I come in by half inch, so that I'll draft my armhole curve together. Why I do this is because when you wear the clothes, so that the hands won't be bulging out, the armhole won't be bulging out, it will be firm. It will make it firm. So that's why I just come in by half inch. And after I come in by half inch, I'm not going to connect my shape together. I'm going to connect my shape together, which I've done. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to come on my shoulder, my shoulder line, and I'll measure 3 inch, because I don't really want my neck to be wide. So I just come and I measure 3 inch. That's it. That's how wide I just want it to be. I don't want it too wide. So after then, the rest there will be 4. Then the depth, I'm going to come down by 1 inch to get my shoulder slope. Our shoulder is not usually straight, it's usually slanty. So I'll just come down by 1 inch to get my shoulder slope, which is usually slanty. After I'm done with that, I'll now come down. On my bust point line, I'm going to measure my nipple to nipple. My nipple, which is 3.5. I'm going to measure that 3.5 on my bust point line, on my under bust line, on my half length line, and also on my blouse length line, and I'll connect it together. I'm connecting the lines together. That's a straight line. I'm connecting it together. So after I'm done connecting it, I'm going to come on my armhole line on my armhole line, and I'm going to come down by ½ inch because I don't really want my neck too deep. So I'm just going to come down by ½ inch. Then after I come down by ½ inch, I'm also going to go in by ½ inch also to get that V neckline. Just to get the V neckline. So I'm going to connect it together. As you can see, the V neckline. So that's just what I want to do. I'm going to connect them together. So I'm going to connect them together. So the next thing to do is on my bust point line, I'm going to, on this line here, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, but it's actually optional. I'm not going to use it. I'm just using it as an illustration. So after then, I'm going to come on this my blouse length line and measure ½ inch. That's 0.5 in and out of the line. And then I'll connect it to my bust point. Like I said initially, I'm not using that 1 inch I came down by. I'm not using it. In case you are big, you can come down by 1 inch, but I'm actually on the slim side, so I'm just going to connect it to my bust point. I'm not going to use that 1 inch. It's just an illustration. In case you are a bit bigger, you can use the 1 inch. So I'm going to connect this my ½ inch. For my darts, I'll connect it to the bust point line and also do the same for the other side. So I haven't been done with it. I haven't been done my darts. Then as you can see, this is my darts. I'm not too big, I'm not too small, so I just make a small dart for myself. So from this point here, from this under bust line to my bust point, I'm going to connect it together. As you can see, I'm just going to use my curve and connect that curve together. So I'm actually done with that. So for the other side, I'm going to come to get the other curve. For the other side, I'm going to come on this armhole line where I measured 2. I'm going to divide it by 2 also, making 1 inch. So from that place I divided by 2, I'm also going to get my curve also. So I'm now going to curve it to the other line I divided it by. So as you can see, I want to curve it. I'm taking my time trying to arrange it so that the curves they actually come out well. So now I'm going to just curve it to the other side. So I'm done with it. So after I'm done getting my cup, I'm not going to start with my basic body measurements. On my bust region, I'm going to measure my bust. On my under bust, I'm going to measure my round under bust. On my half length, I'm going to measure my waist. On my blouse length, I'm going to measure my hip. I'll measure my hip on the blouse length. So I'm now going to measure the dart intake, which is 1 inch. I'll measure it back. The dart intake for the half length side, which is 0.7, I'm still going to measure it back. The dart intake for the underbust, which is ½ inch, I'll measure it also. So this one I think is 0.3. I'm also going to measure it back. So having been done with that, I'm not going to add my allowance to it. My allowance, I'm adding 2.5 inch allowance to it. So I'm adding 2.5 inch allowance to all of them. Then I'm going to connect them together. I'm going to use my French curve and just connect them. Connect my shape together. So I'm just trying to make sure they meet each other. So I'm done connecting my shape together. So now I'm going to carry my scissors now and cut it out. I'm going to cut the whole shape out. So I'm cutting it carefully. So as you can see, it's coming out already. So now I'm not going to trace the cup side out. I'm going to cut it out also. I'm cutting it carefully so that I have an accurate measurement. I'm going to cut my dart out. This is what it's going to look like. So I'm cutting my dart out also. So having been done with it, I've cut it out already. So I'm going to take a sellotape and I'll make sure I join both these two together. Both the center front and the side front, I'm going to join them together to get my V part, because the dress is actually a V dress. It has a V, so I'm going to join them together to cut the V part of the dress. So I'm done with it. So on this my half length line by the side, I'm going to come down by ½ inch. I'm going to take my tape rule and come down by ½ inch. So having been done with that, I'm going to now connect it from that place to my down to my blouse length in a slanty line, and I'll cut out my V shape out. As you can see, I've put my French curve. I used the straight part of it to get the slanty line for my V part. So now I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut it out, and after I'm done cutting it out, I'm going to remove my sellotape. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to go and work on the cup. If you notice in the style, the cup part was actually bigger than the initial fabric. It had like a pleating, or should I say a squeeze. So I'm just going to place it on another brown paper. So I place it on my brown paper to get my slash and spreading of it. I'm going to come up and measure 4 inches and divide the 4 inches by 4, which will give me 1 inch, and I measure the 1 inches around. And from that 1 inches I measured, I'm just going to tape it so that it doesn't move. Then from that 1 inches I measured, I'm going to measure the 1 inches down. I'm going to take a straight line from that 1 inch down. Each of that point, I'm going to take a straight line down to do the slash and spread method. I haven't been done with that. Then I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to cut it and stop at the end. I'm not going to finish cutting it. I'll just stop at the end of it. So I'm cutting it and stopping at the end so that I'll be able to slash it after on. So I'm actually done cutting it. So to get my slash method, I'm going to just open it a bit. When I open it a bit, from the point where I opened it to the other point, I'm just going to measure 1 inch. I'll measure 1 inch, chalk it, let's measure it, and I'm going to use my sellotape to tape it down. So that's the point. I'm still going to measure it is 1 inch. So for the second part also, I'm going to do the same for the second part. I'm going to open it also, measure 1 inch. I'm going to open the second part also, measure 1 inch and tape it down. So I'm slashing it already. This was the spread and slash method I was telling you about. So I'm going to also use my tape to tape it down. Also, I made sure there are 1 inch in between it. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. I'm going to measure the same 1 inch. I'm going to measure it, then I'll use my tape and tape it down. So after I'm done, I'm just going to use my tape also and tape other sides down so that they relax well for me to draft out the shape. Remember, I didn't slash the shoulder side, the up side, because it's 4 and I just want it to remain at 4. It's just the very curved side that I'm slashing. So I'm not going to trace out the shape out. I'll trace out this shape out, then I'll cut it. After I'm done with that, I'm going to open it. My curve is looking like it's not really fine, just I'm just going to use my hand and draft it well. Then after I'm done with that, I'm going to cut it out. So the cup is now a bit bigger so that I'll be able to squeeze it to get that pleats or gathers by that bust side. So I'm done with that. Again, this is the cup. This is the cup. I'm going to write the cup. This is the center front and this is the side front. So this is my back. I've drafted my basic body measurements already. And this is my dart also with zipper allowance by the side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make sure my zipper allowance comes well. This is the zip allowance, I wrote it there. So to get this v-neck you're seeing here, I'm just going to connect it down to this armhole line. From the 3, I've drafted the same way I drafted for the front. It's just the same way I did it here. So I'm just going to get my V for the back. Then after I'm done with that, I'm going to curve my armhole. The curving of this back armhole is slightly different from the front one. I'll just come and measure my 2 inch as usual. I measure the 2 inch. Then after I measure the 2 inch, I'm not coming in. I'm not going to come on that armhole line and divide it by 2 and come in by ½ inch. I'm just going to connect it straight. Since it's the back, this is how the back is usually done. I'm just going to connect it straight. After I'm done with that, that's basically all for that. I'm going to just come and take my basic body measurements. I'll take my bust, measure it. I'll measure my round under bust. I'm taking my dart intake also. This is my dart intake. I'll measure my waist. I'll measure my dart intake also. I'll measure my hip and also measure the dart intake. I'm adding my 2.5 inch allowance to it. So I'm adding it. After I'm done adding my 2.5 allowance to it, I'm just going to chalk it out. I'll chalk my body out After I'm done, then I'm just going to cut it out. I'm going to cut it out as you can see me doing. This is my zipper allowance by the side. So after I'm done cutting it, it's actually a V clothes. The front I measured a V also. So I'm going to come on that half length line the way I did for the front and measure half inch down, and I'm going to connect it down the slanting line to my blouse length line, but I'm going to fold my zipper allowance inside so that it's going to give me a very good shape. So I'm going to cut it out after I connect the slanting line. So my zipper allowance is also blending with it. So if you noticed, the back had a white material for the up, so that's what I actually cut out. I just cut it out. So this is it. I've gone and placed it on my material. Watch out for the next video where I'm going to join them together and you see how beautiful it's going to look like. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe on my channel. Thank you and bye.